Hello student, how are you? Today we have chapter 1, Self-Development Language Teacher. In this chapter we will deal with the two questions. Question 1, does the self-development make differences? And the question 2, what factors are central to teacher self-development? In order to answer the question number 1, does the self-development make differences? We have two classes, as you know. The first class of a teacher, she who has not had the opportunity to work on the development of his teaching. The second one is that the teacher Kathy, who has taken in the responsibility for her own development. If you go to the Yoshi class, you will find that she's a graduate from geography department, and he want to teach his student English language. So he teach them only how to read and read the passages and make the answer of the questions without making any development in his teaching. At the end of the lesson, he considered the idea of going to the bookstore to look for books in teaching English in order to develop himself. While in Kathy's classroom, if you go to her class, you will find that she's graduating from history department, and she worked in her initial intensive training in English language. So she want to teach her student in Hungary students to teach them English language. They are from 4th year English. So in Kathy lessons, she want to combine 4 skills, if you remember: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Kathy usually do her work come to the class before it begins. Before the class began, 5 minutes for example, and she writes on her whiteboard some words in order to make her student motivate. The reasons behind the putting the pictures, or what we call it, put the phrases on the blackboard, there are two. First, because she is bothered by how long it usually takes place to begin the class, and second, she wanted to explore her own of teaching and teach her students to speak English spontaneously with each other. So if you go to the in order to make the differences between the two classes, so we go compare between Kathy's teaching and Yoshi's teaching. There are some obvious differences between Yoshi's and Kathy's styles of teaching. This is number one. In the styles of teaching, Yoshi goes through his lesson in a more or less lockstep fashion, mostly following the text. By Kathy designs her own lessons and begins innovative ideas into her teaching. Yoshi rarely breaks from the step-by-step progression in the course text, even when he senses that the students are not showing interest or comprehending the content. He does his best to explain the meaning of the text, but he does not break it from it. Nor does she engage the student in negotiating the meaning of the text and with his or each other. He is center of the lesson and all instruction. He feels secure in the having of the text to follow, and also at some level he senses that his lessons could be greatly different. He does not break away from his lockstep away from teaching. In contrast with Kathy, does not seem to rely on one way of teaching, rather than she is making herself the center of the attention. She consciously looks for her ways to make the class and a community of the learner. in which the students feel free to communicate with each other in English and to her and classmates real questions and to assume some of for their own learning. She is trying to focus the learner. So this is explanation of the differences between Yoshi and Kathy in the first point, the differences between in the style of teaching. If you go to the second point is about differences between them and cultural background has something to do with the differences. Kathy is a native speaker of English who comes from Africa to America, while Yoshi has the same native language and cultural background as the student. Although the student won't cut Yoshi, a near native speaker of English, to use English with them in a class, they may be hesitate to speak up in English with someone who also share the same language and cultural norms and values. It may also be difficult for Yoshi since he speaks Japanese with those or with these some people when they are not in class. And we have the third point three differences between them about the setting, maybe also the factor effect on the teaching. Yoshi teaches in a corporate world, a setting where in many cases student business responsibilities to take precedence over English classes and homework assignments, and where students are not required to attend the classes. Kathy teaches at a high school where many of students are quite motivated to learn English and other languages. And here we have the last point about the differences between them. A significant reasons for the differences is the way that they approach their development as teachers. While Kathy is eager to take on responsibility for her own development, Yoshi is now just realized that he needs to do this. If you go to the other questions, the second one, what factors are central to teacher self-development? So we have many factors in order to make self-development in teacher. The number one is the time. It takes time to observe interaction in our own classrooms and to visit other teachers' classes, as well as to write in a journal and to talk to others about the teaching. Pre-service teachers have an advantage in that the time factor is built into the teacher education program. Teachers in in-service programs are those who working independently on their development, have less time. Nevertheless, teachers who believe that the development is important need to make a commitment to devote time for their development. So the time is very important in order to develop ourselves. The second factor is that ongoing commitment. Development, not something that the teacher do just while a teaching education program or at the beginning of the teaching career. Rather, even the most experienced teacher can learn new things about teaching and development and enhance when the teacher makes commitment to ongoing development. So all of us, you are teachers, you should continue on your development. Not needed more experience, it's not stop about the experience, or this is what we call it continue development. For example, although many would call Kathy teach skills develop, she continues to explore her teaching as it is consequences on student in creating learning center classroom. The third factor, development and enhanced through problem solving. Problem solving is the third factor. When teachers recognize problems and work at solving them, they can discover new things about teaching and about themselves as teachers. You have example Kathy exploration into getting the class starting quickly and her interest in getting students to use more English in class indicate that she continues to generate way to generate ways to solve perceived problems in her teaching. So we have the fourth factor, factor number 4, exploration for exploration's sake. Teacher can indeed discover much by exploring, simply to explore, not only to solve a problem, but also to exploration can be based on pure interest. For example, trying the opposite simply to see what happens, or trying out an idea simply because it sounds interesting. Here you have example. Kathy puts attention to the basics of teaching. Although her attention to the basics begins during her peace crops training, she has continued to study ways to provide chances for students to interest in English, ways to manage the classroom behaviors, material and media used to teach EFL, and cultural concepts as they are related to the language and herself as a teacher. In addition, she has undoubtedly considered ways to teach different skills such as reading, writing, listening, and speaking. These 4 skills are very important in language teaching. Number 6. Development is enhanced by searching out opportunities to develop. Kathy, for example, looks for opportunities to develop her teaching. She talks with other teachers about teaching, reads about teaching, attends teaching seminars, workshops, and participate in other activities that give her chances to reflect on her teaching and see new teaching possibilities. And the 7th factor number 7, as Kathy also recognizes self-development of teaching beliefs and the practices requires the cooperation of others. So we should do self-development with cooperate with others. It takes others who are willing to observe, listen to, talk with us. These people include administrators, students, and other teachers, and with the friends. Without their cooperation, self-development is very difficult, as there is neither any source for feedback nor any stimulates for idea. So if you are working with other teachers or with maybe the advice of student, also it's maybe benefits for you as a teacher in order to develop teaching. Thank you for your listening. These are 2 tasks like something like exercises. You should benefit from it. Thank you for your listening.